When it comes to magical combat in Harry Potter, there are good spells for good wizards and bad spells for bad wizards. But when it comes to political combat in Game of Thrones, there is no such distinction. There, like in our world, if you want to achieve your goals, whether those goals are good or whether those goals are bad, you need to be relentlessly focused on what is effective. And if you're in the market for political tactics that work, you should be paying close attention to Littlefinger. He's really good at sowing division. Whenever it looks like two characters are about to put aside their differences and start working together, Littlefinger comes in and finds a way to get them to fight with each other instead. And maybe the best example of this is that at the beginning of the story, the Starks and the Lannisters are on the cusp of an alliance, until Littlefinger comes in and poisons their relationship. One of the things that's so cool about Littlefinger as a character is that his approach to politics works in the real world. And I want to give you an example. When a member of Congress wants to kill a bill, there's a trick they can use that sounds exactly like the kind of thing that Littlefinger would use if he were a member of Congress. It even has a name that I think would appeal to him. It's called the Poison Pill Amendment. The idea is that when a bill comes up for a vote, members of Congress sometimes have the opportunity to propose changes to the bill. Those are called amendments. A Poison Pill Amendment is an amendment that looks to most legislators like it would improve the bill, but if you incorporate it, it's going to make it politically impossible for that bill to pass. So I want to show you how the principles behind Littlefinger's excellence in politics from Game of Thrones play out in the United States Congress by walking you through the most famous poison pill amendment of all time. This is the story of the Powell Amendment. The year was 1956, and there was a severe classroom shortage in the United States. In response, the House of Representatives was considering a bill that would provide federal aid to the states so that the states could build more schools. Now, there were three factions in the House of Representatives at the time. The largest, the liberals, supported the bill. The smallest, the conservatives, opposed the bill. They didn't think the federal government should be getting involved in public education. But there was also this third faction, the Southerners, who had mixed feelings about the bill. The expectation was that most Southerners were going to join the conservatives in voting against the bill, but the question was how many. If pretty much all of them voted with the conservatives, then together they'd have enough votes to block the bill. But if just a couple dozen joined up with the liberals, then the bill would have enough votes to pass. As the House was debating this bill, Adam Clayton Powell Jr., the liberal representative from Harlem, decided that he wanted to offer an amendment. The Supreme Court had recently ruled that school segregation was unconstitutional, but lots of southern states were still running segregated schools. Powell wanted to do something about that, so he proposed this amendment that would make it so that you could not get any of the school aid money from the bill until you agreed to desegregate. Southern representatives hated this amendment, but liberals and conservatives both liked it. If everybody voted on the amendment based on how they felt about school segregation, the amendment would have plenty of votes to pass. But if the amendment passed, the bill would be doomed to failure. And the reason is that even if you added the Powell Amendment, conservatives still weren't going to vote for the bill. They thought it made the bill better, but they still thought the federal government shouldn't be getting involved in public education. And if you incorporated the Powell Amendment, no Southerners were going to vote for the bill. What this meant was the Powell Amendment was a poison pill. Most members thought it would make the bill better, but once you incorporated it, you'd alienate the Southerners, you wouldn't pick up any conservative votes, and the bill would fail. Conservatives figured out pretty quickly that passing the Powell Amendment was their ticket to killing this school aid bill. Some liberals noticed what was going on, so they took to the House floor and said things like this.
I rise to oppose this amendment because I am completely and absolutely convinced that its attachment to this bill in the House of Representatives will kill any hope of enactment of this very necessary bill into law.
What they were saying is that if liberals wanted to pass the school aid bill, they needed to join up with the Southerners to kill the Powell Amendment. But not all liberals were buying it, including Powell himself. He thought that you couldn't just make this a discussion of legislative strategy divorced from the principle that was involved. He read a resolution from the NAACP that said that a vote against the Powell Amendment is a vote for segregation. And as Powell tried to make his argument, he also tried to convince everybody that this amendment wasn't going to cause the bill to fail. So he actually just asked the conservatives point blank, hey, if we pass the Powell Amendment, will you vote for the bill? Because we know with the benefit of hindsight that they weren't going to, but nobody knew that for sure at the time. This placed the conservatives in a rather awkward position, because they couldn't very well just admit, oh yeah, we're totally going to vote against the bill, this is a trap. That might make it so that liberals wouldn't want to support the Powell Amendment anymore. But they couldn't just ignore the question, because that would be very suspicious. So that just left them with one option, which was to lie. So they did.
If the Powell Amendment is agreed to, and provided the basic changes requiring the states to amend their ways, I will support the bill.
When the House voted on the Powell Amendment, it was opposed by this weird coalition of Southern segregationists and about 80 pro-civil rights liberals who were afraid that the Powell Amendment was a poison pill. But most liberals stuck with Powell, and together with the conservatives, they had enough votes to pass the Powell Amendment. Then the House voted on the school aid bill with the Powell Amendment in it, and things went exactly as the conservatives had planned. The conservatives voted no, the Southerners voted no, and together they had enough votes to block the school aid bill. The reason the conservatives were able to win, even though they were the smallest of the three factions, is that they had a good strategy for breaking up the opposing coalition. They took a bill that was about education, where the liberals and Southerners had some common ground, and injected this issue of civil rights, where the liberals and Southerners were diametrically opposed. And like any good political manipulator, they made sure that they weren't the ones caught holding the knife. Powell was not a conservative, and he was not trying to kill the bill. He was a liberal, and he proposed his amendment out of a sincere commitment to the idea that Congress should do something about school segregation. Waiting for Powell to take the lead was probably the most brilliant part of the conservatives' plan. If that exact same amendment had been proposed by a conservative, I think liberals would have been a lot more suspicious, and the amendment might not have passed. But the fact that it came from Powell, who was a liberal, who wanted to pass the bill, but who also wanted to do something about school segregation, I think could have played a role in why this amendment was able to pass and ultimately able to kill the bill. I think there's a lot we can learn from Littlefinger's approach to politics and from poison pill amendments, because this situation where you've got people who agree about some things and disagree about others, and they're trying to find a way to work together, comes up all the time. And not just in the kinds of politics that happen in Washington, D.C., not just in the kinds of politics that happen in Westeros, but in the kinds of politics that comes up in our ordinary lives. And I think the lesson here is that if you're the person who's trying to get people to work together as a team, you need to be on the lookout for somebody who's trying to come in and inject an issue that will make it harder for everyone to come together. And if you're on the other side, and you're the person who needs to prevent a coalition from coming together, now you've got a new trick. That's all for today. Thanks for watching, and I hope I'll see you next time. One more thing, I'll be making more videos, so if what's on the screen right now looks interesting to you, be sure to subscribe to this channel so that you'll get a notification when the next video comes out.